But I think it was done out of incompetence. That's what I think. I believe that a scientist went out, said hello to his girlfriend, and that was the end of that. She died, and then people started dying all over the place. But who knows? Who knows? I can tell you one thing. I got along with President Xi.
So that is Donald Trump talking about COVID, about the fact that people were dying all over the place. But who knows? Who knows? As someone in the audience, maybe a few people, laughs. Fox News audience, full of Republicans. Yeah, remember that when people were dying all over the place? Yeah, that was fun. So there was also a little bit of his theorizing that a scientist accidentally released it into the wild or whatever. But Donald Trump was in charge. Donald Trump presided over the single largest failure of our government and domestic policy in our lifetime, perhaps multiple lifetimes. Needlessly, hundreds of thousands of people died. And I know when I said that yesterday, people said over 1 million people died. No, I understand that. Some people were always going to die. I'm baking in that it was going to be devastating. I'm saying what Trump and the Republicans added to it was obviously hundreds of thousands of additional Americans who died who did not need to, even with how bad COVID was and the fact that it was inevitably going to spread. And now looking back on that period, what should be the greatest embarrassment, the greatest shame of his career and his life. And he says, whatever. People died all over the place, who knows? Like how do you not throw that into an ad? How many Americans lost a friend, lost a family member? I lost a member of my family. To see him joking about it and someone in the crowd, a member of his base laughing about it, should serve as a reminder that a return of Donald Trump to power is not just a return of buffoonery and him saying absurd things. It's giving him the reins of power in a world in which terrible things happen, and who is in charge is of critical, like literally life and death importance. Jordan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a general callousness, but really it's because he only cared about the health of the economy. That's how he thinks. He only cares about money, he cares about himself. And the people around him only cared about maximizing profit during that time. So people started enterprises to capitalize on that moment. He did next to nothing to prevent the spread at a time where it was especially important. And I think he's also trying to navigate his base because it's really complicated. He wants to be the guy who developed the vaccine that happened under his watch. He made that part of his rhetoric at the end of 2020. But what I'm so curious about is how that plays out, especially when you have people like DeSantis who's saying, I'm gonna hold everyone accountable, everyone who implemented any of these restrictions whatsoever. Well, there was a lot of Trump administration officials. And he recognized that was unpopular because people are selfish. People don't have any sort of collectivism here. And while every other developed country took it seriously because they recognize this is a global public health threat, Trump and his supporters like, well, we want to go back to Applebee's. And it's like, I don't know, there's a risk there. And the consequence is, as that materializes, is people died all over. He doesn't care. No one really seems to care, even if their friends or relatives care. It's just an unbelievable display of self-centeredness.
Yeah, for me, I'm assuming for you, I'm assuming for everyone watching, if you knew that you were responsible sometime in your life for a single person dying, I would assume that would haunt you to this day, that you would occasionally lose sleep over it, that like you would go to therapy. He knows what he did, and not just in this area. The fact that he massively increased the amount of bombing that we were doing overseas. By the way, at this town hall, he talked about the fact that every other president has had wars. I had no wars. What the hell are you talking about? He massively increased our bombing campaign in Syria. We were still involved with Afghanistan the entire time. If he didn't want that on his record, he could have pulled out. Obviously, he increased our support to Saudi Arabia and their vicious war on Yemen. The idea that he had no wars is absolutely laughable, but there's a lot of different areas where you can attribute deaths to him. I think a lot of his border policy also resulted in a lot of deaths of migrants as well, but nothing more than with COVID, and it doesn't bother him at all. He is, like, I throw around the term sociopath, and I probably should not do that. But for you to be so little affected by the fact that you killed stadiums of people, how can you give that person a single ounce of political power?
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.